Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the resume workshop provided by the Office of Career Connections. My name is Kyle O'Neill. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Career Connections here at eULM. We're here to help you with a lot of stuff. Obviously, resumes are a big part of it, but our office is also in charge of the career fairs. We host 4 a year. There's a fall career fair, nursing and health sciences career fair in the fall, a spring career fair, and then a education majors career fair. It's also held in the spring. So some other things that we can do real quick, I'll throw it out there. If you've got any questions about interview skills, or if you want to do a mock interview with somebody, we either have a digital version, we have a computerized version called Interview Stream. You can come and do that. It's literally you and a computer. It films you and it allows you kind of self-critique. Or if you want more of a one-on-one interaction, myself or my director, Ms. Rosalind Pogue, more than willing to work with you on that. We also have a counseling intern working in our office this fall. Her name is Kelsey Jefferson, and she is there to help you with some of the skills-related things. So she would actually be working with you on your resumes. She may work on you with some of the interview things. So that's just kind of an added bonus. That's something new that we've brought on this year. So I guess I say all that to say, if you've got any questions as far as your career outlook or any skills that you want to work on for your future job or your future career, come by and see us. 3rd floor library. We're exactly on the opposite corner of this room on the far side of the library. So like I said, without further ado, it's a resume workshop. I'm sure who in here has not heard of a resume? Okay, that's good. That's a good start. It still is the most important professional document you can have. It really is. The resume speaks for you when you can't speak for you. If that makes any sense? Your resume is an extension of you. So when you're sending this in to a professional organization, whether it's for an internship, a part-time job, or a full-time job, you want that resume to be a really, really good reflection of who you are. Because there's no faster way to not get a job than a bad resume. Because especially in today's world, a lot of times we've gotten away from, walking in and shaking a hand and saying, hey, I'm really interested in coming and working for you. That's going away. You don't see that these days. It's really hard to find a company that will just, shake your hand, meet you off the street. So your resume is going to speak for you in a professional setting when you can't be there. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try our very hardest to get you a very well put together, well established resume. Many of you have picked up some packets. We'll kind of talk about that briefly as we go along. All right, so here's some 8 tips to get you started. Obviously, start with the basics. You'll see on some of your sample resumes, the basics are your name, your address, your phone number, and your email. I cannot stress enough, make sure they are correct. You would be so surprised, students, they're in a hurry to get their resume put together. They put, one wrong number in their phone number. They can't get a hold of you, all right? So, it goes without saying, make sure that's correct. Your email addresses. Make sure that A, that they're correct, and B, that they're professional. It sounds really silly, and I'm going to share some really funny examples, but, Hot Mama, 420, or Big Stud, 97, yeah, they're cool for high school. But when you want to become a professional, it needs to be a professional email address. For now, your Warhawk address would work. But I caution you using that because once you graduate, it's going to go bye-bye. I don't know how long it is. I think it's about 6 months that they'll give you before they cancel it. But at some point, it's going to go bye-bye. My recommendation is just go set up a Gmail account, something very basic using your name. Mine, for instance, is KO'Neal4803. It's my football number in the year I graduated high school because K. O'Neal was taken. Just something very simple because, like I said, that speaks for you. A lot of times a professional, if they're going through, they'll start weeding stuff out just on the email address because, they're looking for somebody who's going to represent their company. So make sure it's very simple, very to the point. Include an objective and or a summary of skills. We'll talk about that on some later slides. Choose the right resume style. We've got a couple of examples here, and again in your packet we've got some examples. I'll cover that in more depth. Pretty much each of these is a slide, so I'll go into more depth. Brainstorm your experience and your skills. List your educational and volunteer experience. Know the cardinal rules of resume writing. Don't ever lie, and we'll really cover that. It's pretty straightforward though. And then last but not least, write your resume first so that then you can go back and prepare a cover letter, okay? So, the basics. We've pretty much already covered this, but again, one more time. Name, give them your name, your spoken name. You know, my full name is Samuel Kyle O'Neill. I do not use Samuel. So on my resume, it's Kyle O'Neill. So use the name that they're going to call you by, all right? Use that name, because the last thing you want is for them to call a reference of yours and they're like, tell me about Alfred. And they're like, who's Alfred? I don't know an Alfred Sims. You know, use the name that people know you by, all right? That goes without saying. Use your permanent address. You know, for instance, for me though, it would be use an address that you'll get mail at, but don't use a P.O. box if you can avoid it. When permanent addresses, I know through about half of my college experience, I just kept my parents' address because I knew it was going to get to their house, and if it was my mail, it was going to get to me. Then when I moved into a house in Ruston, you know, I started using that address. But use one that you know if they send you something to fill out or some kind of question or answer survey that you can get it, all right? Your telephone numbers, like I said. Yes, ma'am. Okay, then I would just use your school address. I would use whatever address you are going to get your mail at. That's convenient for you. You know, for some of y'all, yeah. You know, if it's not convenient for you to use your parents' address, use your school address. But as you get older, make sure obviously that you update that. All right, and that's something that I'll remind everybody about. Your telephone numbers, we already discussed that, but include your area code, the full number, and make sure it is right. Double check it. And again, your email address. Always make sure that it's professional, all right? So now you have your objective skills or your summary. All right, there's a couple of different things you can do here. First off, there's an objective statement. That is the most basic thing you can do. It is very, very, very simple. What job do you want and who is it with? So for instance, to obtain the assistant manager to obtain the assistant manager position at the Lowe's Home Department or Lowe's Home Depot or whatever it is in Monroe, Louisiana. That's it. Very simple. What job do you want? Where is it? That's it. You can also do, you might even do an objective summary. And that's something that I've got on my resume. I don't really have an example of it here because some of these are a little older. But in objective summary, instead of a one sentence statement, it's a 3-sentence statement, and it describes you as a candidate. It's not necessarily, you know, telling what specific job you're going to apply for, but it's giving more of a summary of who you are as a candidate. For anybody that's interested in that, I'll definitely can get you an example of that. But for instance, it should be about 3 sentences long. First sentence is a description of what you're currently doing. So for instance, mine talked about my role as the coordinator of academic internships at the time, or a career specialist, student career specialist. Second one talked about kind of how I got there. So it gave a brief description of a little bit of the education and some of my work experience that got me to where I'm at. And the third sentence is more just a description of who you are as a candidate. So for me, I was, you know, an energetic and personal individual. I can't remember the rest of it, but it's just basically a 3-sentence summary that describes you as a candidate. Not necessarily saying, you know, I'm applying for this job with this company, but it's more of this is who I am as a candidate. And what's great about that is it's a blanket summary. It's a blanket statement. When you do an objective statement, you have to update that for every job. Because if you're applying for an assistant manager position at Lowe's, you don't want to send one to Home Depot that still has Lowe's written on it. You know, you've got to go in and make sure that that's changed with every single job that you apply to. With an objective summary, You don't have to edit it as much. Sure, you may have to edit it some, especially if you're trying to go into maybe a career field that maybe your summary doesn't quite match up with. You may have to tweak it a little bit. But more often than not, you won't have to change it. You know, you can send that to any job that you're applying for. That blanket summary is going to kind of cover everything. Also, you can do a skill summary. I see this a lot with students who you know, they've gotten to college and they've been, you know, plugged into their studies, and they just they didn't have time to go and work. They didn't have, you know, the time or the ability to go and work. They had to study, or, you know, they had to really focus on their academia. So they don't have maybe necessarily a ton of work experience. So we can talk about maybe some more of the skills. But when you're doing this, always remember, concentrate on what the employer wants and needs in an employee, not what you need. So I say that to say, make sure that you're tailoring the skill summary to what that company needs. You know, I always say this, for instance, if you're an introvert, you know, you probably don't want to be a car salesman. Whereas if you're an extrovert, you probably don't want to be, you know, a lab scientist working in a cubicle, you know, crunching numbers or doing little experiments all day. You want to be out shaking hands, talking with people. So that kind of translates back to this. Make sure that your skills match up with what that job needs. Make sure that when they read that, it makes sense. They're reading through your skill set and they're going, okay, this person can actually do the job that they're applying for. All right? All right, the right resume style, and we'll talk about some of these right now. Chronological is always really good. The very best way is actually reverse chronological. Obviously, chronological is a timeline. You know, it starts from the beginning and works to where you are. But on a resume, you actually want to start with where you are and go backwards. All right, so you want to start with your most current position and go backwards. And you'll see that through some of these, like this one right here. You know, it starts best department store, executive team leader, 2008, and since they don't have a second date, obviously that probably means that they're still currently there. I like to say current, 2008-current, let them know you're still there. But then you'll see it goes backwards. Before that job, they were actually, you know, with the United States Agricultural Survey from 2005 to 2008. So you're still listing them in order, you're just listing them backwards. And the reason that does that is, more often than not, your most recent job is probably the most important job that you've had to that point. It's probably the most important job as far as your responsibilities, as far as the the role that you have with that company per se. So you want to make sure that that is the focus point, and then you start working backwards, and by doing that, it kind of shows how you've progressed to where you're at now. Okay, functional is good. This is more of this is a little bit more of a functional. It's good if you need to emphasize your skills instead of experience. So for instance, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about with a student that maybe they just did not have time to work when they were in school. They had to, focus on their studies. They had to stay up, study, all this stuff. They don't have the work experience to build off of. So they've got to go off of their skills and the knowledge base that they've absorbed here in college, to show what they've got to offer. Because more often than not, they look at two things. A lot of times that company's going to want somebody that has the work experience. So it's tough for somebody who doesn't have that work experience. So you really got to prove your worth with your, almost with this, the emphasis on your skills. So in that instance, what you're focusing on, if you don't have a lot of the work history, is something kind of like this. You're wanting to prove, what have you done? What have you absorbed here at the university that's going to make you a quality employee? So that's where you're going to talk about, some of your education. You want to talk about, for instance, maybe some of the clubs you've been in, some of the leadership roles you may have taken in some of the clubs, event planning, or any maybe of the volunteer work, and we'll touch a little bit more on the volunteer work. But you're really trying to paint a picture of, okay, I may not have all of this work experience to offer, but I do have these skills and these abilities to offer you. That's what you're trying to paint when you're talking about that emphasize your skills. But honestly, a combination of both are great. And the way that you do that is, this is a great example, honestly. You know, obviously it's reverse chronological and it's doing this, but you know, they're not just giving, let's see, there was one like this, they're just giving the job. They're saying what they did. You know, they were a server at good food restaurant. But what's great is this one, they're actually doing the bullet points. I'm a huge advocate of bullet points, but they're actually showing what skills they developed at that job. And that's a great, great way to showcase not only what you've done or where you've worked, but what you did while you were there, because that's really what they want to know. When an employer picks up your resume, that's what they're looking at. They want to know, what has this person done, and does it relate to the job that they're applying for with our company? So what you're wanting to do is really paint a picture. And I always say, when I'm working with students, you want to use, you know, kind of, I call them strong action verbs, but you're really trying to show what you accomplished there. So for instance, you know, they've got managing, assisting, providing, achieving, safeguarding, classifying, preparing, assisting. I'm trying to think of some other ones that I've used. Consulted, you know, these kind of verbs. And you're wanting to paint kind of a picture, a very short snippet. You know, you're not using full sentences. This is what they want to see, the bullet points. And I always advise students, come up with at least three bullet points per job. The max, I would say 5, unless it was, like for instance, the role I'm in now, I've got like 8 bullet points because there's just so much that we do. But you want to give a really good viewpoint of what you did, because what you're doing right here is, I mean, you're bragging on yourself. You're showing them what you know, and what you've gained, the skills and the abilities. So that's what you're trying to show them there. So don't sell yourself short on these.
Question. Okay, in my case, I worked at Brookshire's.
Okay.
Okay. So would I put like the skills I learned from that if I'm trying to apply for I'm in a biology degree, to apply for like optometry school, or optometry job, like would I put still those skills with it too?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that I would twist that is, you know, because obviously most people are like optometry and Brookshire's, they don't have a lot in common, but they really do. Because even in optometry, you're going to have to do customer service. You know, I mean, you've got to keep the client or your patient, you got to provide good service. So that's one aspect of it. The next could be a little bit of management. You know, I don't know how far up you got in your role, but, you know, if you're an optometrist, you're going to be probably at least part management of an office at some point. So that's another thing. Another service that I'm trying to think of something else.
Because like my job is I work in the office type
Mm-hmm.
of thing. I'm a bagger, cashier, stocker. I do pretty much everything in that store. So
yeah. Well then, so that's another thing. Do you do any of the ordering at all?
I do.
Okay, so see, that's another thing. You know, obviously, most optometrists, you know, the people below them do a lot of that kind of work, but the fact that you know how to do that, you know, it could help provide the leadership that you would need for them. Another thing is, you know, the paperwork that's involved. Obviously, in optometry, you've got a lot of paperwork. So even though, like, you know, and I was going to talk about that, you know, no job is insignificant. Believe me, no job is insignificant. You know, even a babysitter, you know, they've got to know time management. They've got to have the responsibility to keep up with the kids. You know, let's see, the creative aspect of being a babysitter. You got to find ways to keep the kids entertained, or else they'll tear the house apart. So no job is insignificant. So just like he pointed out, even a Brookshire's job, the skills and the abilities and the concepts that he's picked up there on the job at Brookshire's, he can still apply toward a future optometry position. It's all in how you word it, you know? It's all in how you take those skills and how you express them. And that's where this is so key, because that's what this allows you to do when you're bullet pointing these concepts. That's where you're explaining, how that skill is going to relate to the job that you're applying for. Well, we've kind of already covered this, but you probably really do have more relevant skills than you realize. And that kind of goes back to what he was talking about. Everything that you do, you can find something to pull out of that job. Whether it's a student worker job here on campus, whether it's flipping burgers at a burger joint, there's something you can find in that job that you can pull out that you can make relevant toward any job that you want. Like I said, it's all in how you express what you've learned. Also, we kind of talked about this earlier, but think backwards. Think about what that employer is looking for. And a lot of times I'll give you a key way to do this. Look at the job description, okay? They tell you what they're looking for in the job description. So many times people just take their resume and they find a job that looks fun or looks like something they think that they can do, and they just shoot it off. But they're telling you right off the bat, this is what we're looking for in this job. And a lot of employers, especially those that have the online applications, they have filters. If your resume doesn't contain some of the words that they're looking for, or specific wordage, your resume is not going to make the cut. It's not even going to make it through the first phase. It doesn't matter how good it looks. They want to know that you have what they're looking for, and that's especially true with especially the online applications that they have these days. I mean, a lot of times they're filtering it just right off the bat, just right off of keywords. They've got certain keywords that they're looking for. If it doesn't pop out of your resume doesn't make it through. So read the job description and make sure that your resume is relevant to the job description that you're applying for. Also, we definitely just covered this, but don't sell yourself short. Little things can be big. Like I was talking about, the babysitting job contributed management skills, creative skills, the scheduling skills. So don't ever just say, oh man, that job's really not that important. Believe me, if it's the only job that you may have had during your college experience, it's important because it's the only job you've had during your college experience, and it needs to go on there. All right, so your academic and volunteer experience. Employers care about what you've learned, so think about the content of those courses. All right, think about that. And you can express that. This is a great way to express it. In your education section, obviously, you want to tell them what you're getting your degree in, where it was, which university. And we'll always tell students, because I've had some students that come, they're like, well, I was at this university for a year, and I transferred here for a year, and now I'm finally at ULM. Go ahead and list the other ones, all right? Just let them know that you have pursued coursework in such and such degree, tell them the years that you were there, and move on. But start with ULM. It's same as this. You want to start with your most recent, and you want to go backwards, okay? While we're talking about education, I'll just go ahead and throw this out. You don't need your high school on there. You don't need it, all right? We've all graduated high school. We've moved on, so you can leave that off. There's only one place that I'll give you permission to use some stuff from high school, and we'll talk about that here in a sec. But where we're talking about the coursework, a great way to showcase that is your relevant courses. Right here under your education, you can actually do a section for relevant courses. Now, don't go crazy on this. They don't want to know every course that you've taken. They don't care that you've taken dance or that you've taken, History 101. But they would care that you've taken maybe, chain management or personal skill development. I don't know. I'm just throwing out some courses. But the very specific courses that you may have taken, like some of your specific maybe management, or maybe a specific marketing, or maybe a specific counseling course that you've taken, like individual analysis or things of that nature. Something, that is more specific, that would be listed. And another great thing is, make sure that the courses that you list, again, they go back to the job that's related to. If you've got a bunch of, counseling courses and you're applying for a marketing job, or vice versa, you're applying for a counseling position or something like that, and all you've got is a bunch of marketing or management. There might be some crossover, but it needs to be pretty consistent with the courses that you've taken need to kind of reflect what job you're wanting to go into. So make sure that that's there. Also, Employers care about what you've done, whether you were paid or not. So this is where we're going to talk about the volunteer experience. Volunteer experience so often gets left off of resumes, and it's a huge mistake for a couple of different reasons. A, it shows that you know how to kind of balance your time, because not only are you in school studying and you probably have a job, but you're also making time to volunteer your extra time to help another organization that's not paying you a dime. It's not doing anything for you outside of that's just something that you care about. Another great way is a lot of these big companies, like your CenturyLinks or, I don't know, Targets or, just some of the bigger corporations, they put a lot of money into nonprofit organizations. They put a lot of money into things like the United Way or the Boys and Girls Club or things of that nature. And you have no idea how much it may mean to that person that's reading your resume that says, wow, Kyle here has invested, a lot of volunteer time with the United Way. And our company, actually, that's our main nonprofit that we, donate to. So what that shows is a lot of times they're going to read that and go, wow, this person already is invested in some of the same things that our company is. They're already invested. They already have kind of a like mindset to some of the things that we as a company care about. So a lot of times you would be surprised how that one little thing may put your resume into the review again pile instead of the we're not really interested pile. Just that one simple thing of making sure that you're listing that volunteer experience. Also, employers like to see that balance. So obviously, everybody's going to have school. All right, we've got school covered. Everybody in this room will have school. Most of us will have work, if not all of us. But do we all have other activities? Because if you don't, you need to get them. And I don't know, how many are freshmen here? I would say most everybody, you're probably in here because you have to take one course for university seminar, which is cool. But I cannot stress that enough as freshmen. And that's something I wish, I managed to get involved at Tech, but I kind of got involved late in the game. And that's something I wish I would have known right there as a freshman is get involved. Find a club, find an organization, find a fraternity or sorority, find something that you can fit in with and that it's a group of people that you like and that you enjoy being around, and get involved, because that stuff matters so much. Obviously your work matters and your school matters, but I would almost venture to say this may even matter more, because it shows that not only can you balance work and balance school, but you're part of an organization. And the older you get, if you can assume some leadership roles in these organizations, that matters that much more. I promise you, we have something like, it's like 200 something organizations on campus. There's somebody here, there's an organization that you can find a home in. Go out there, explore them, and find a home, because that stuff will matter when it comes time. That can be the difference between somebody going, wow, this candidate is very well qualified. They've extended themselves. They've put forth an effort. They've been involved on the university campus, as opposed to, wow, this student has a really great GPA, but what did they do? I don't see where they got involved. I don't see where they took on any leadership roles. I don't see where they extended themselves outside of the classroom. And a lot of times, you may have a 275 student that gets a job over a student that's got a 4.0, because that 275 student was involved in 4 different organizations and assumed a leadership role maybe in one of them, whereas that 4.0 student, they have a great GPA, but they don't have anything else to show for their college career. They weren't involved. They didn't extend themselves. They didn't get to know people. They didn't form relationships outside of, maybe their little study group. So make sure that you're getting involved. Find a place to get involved and assert yourself. All right. A couple cardinal rules. All right. First off, don't use sentences, and we kind of covered that, but your resume, it's not the place for sentences. Even on these bullet points, you can read here. It says, driving sales by overseeing guest service of store. That's not a full sentence. That's not a full sentence. Even on your to obtain an internship or part-time job related to research financial analysis in the Monroe West Monroe area for the summer of 2010. Again, it's not full sentences. They don't need the full sentence. And the reason it's not full sentence is you don't ever use the word I, ever. You don't have to. They understand that this is your resume. You don't have to show ownership of it by throwing the word I on there. All right? So just doesn't need to go on there. If you've got it all over there, come and see me, and I'll promise you I can find a way to get it off of there for you. Use those power action verbs, and that's kind of what I was talking about here with the manage and the driving and the assisting and the sculpting or the collaborating, things of that nature. Instead of try to avoid the to be, the was, the were. They don't want to see something like was a receptionist. They don't know. They want to see assisted customers as they enter the location and provided timely answers to their questions. Something of that nature. They want to see what did you do. They don't want to just know a title or know that you sat behind a desk. They want to know, well, what did you do while you were back there? So make sure that you're expanding on that. Use parallel structure in lists. Begin each item with the same part of speech. So that's really, really simple. If it's your current job, everything needs to be current. Assist, prepare, engage, consult. If it's a past job, it just needs to be in the past. Assisted, consulted, confirmed. So it's very, very, very simple. Make no mistakes in spelling, grammar, punctuation, none. This is that story I was going to tell you about. All right, St. Francis. We have a great relationship with them and their recruiters, Anna and Kristen. They had a position come open. I can't remember what it was. It was probably like a nursing position. I don't remember. But it was something like 750 resumes for one job. If they had any punctuation, any grammar error, it hit the trash can. It didn't matter how good of a resume it was. It didn't matter how qualified that candidate was. If there was something misspelled on there, they didn't give it the time of day. And you're like, wow, that's kind of really harsh. But they had a great reason is. Their reason was, look, if they don't care enough to make sure that this resume is as perfect as it can be, if they haven't handed that to a significant other or a friend to read over, spell check, if they didn't spell check when they typed it on Word, if they didn't take the time to do that, then we don't want them with our organization. We only want the very, very best. So, that's a pretty harsh example, but that's an example that's true in a ton of organizations right now because the job market, it's still pretty tight. And that's a very easy, quick way to weed candidates out. If they don't have the time, if they don't want to take the time or the effort to make sure that resume is as perfect as it can be before you hit submit or you put it in an envelope and you mail it away, they're not going to want you with their company. So just make sure, and that's as simple as proofreading it. You proofread it. Give it to your friend. Give it to your boyfriend. Give it to your girlfriend. Send it to me. Send it to Rosalind. Send it to a teacher. Send it to your parents. Send it to somebody and say, hey, this job means a lot to me. Will you just read over this and let me know if you see any mistakes? I promise you. Your resume will look perfect when you read it, but I promise you, if you let one other person read it, they will tear it apart with mistakes because we're guilty of that. My resume myself, I wrote it out. I was like, wow, that's a sharp resume. It looks good. I let my director look at it. It looked like flunked paper. She shredded it for me. But I'm glad that she did because I just overlooked my mistakes. It was as simple as that. I knew what I'd written and I knew how I wanted it to look, but there was just a ton of mistakes on it that I just glanced over. So just make sure that somebody is looking over it. Probably the biggest thing I can stress on a resume is this. Just don't lie. Don't lie. And there's a couple of reasons why you don't want to. A, you don't want to get caught in a lie because it's going to get very, very awkward for you. B, you don't want to lie, get the job, and then they find out after you get the job, you have no idea how to do anything that you said that you did. That's going to get really, really awkward. And last but not least, look, you're only doing yourself a disservice because, look, if you lie on a resume and they like you, they're going to research you as a candidate. They're going to call your references. They're going to call past bosses. They're going to call professors. They're going to do their due diligence before they hire you. And they're going to find out. It's only a matter of time before they find out that you've fibbed a little bit on your resume. So just there's ways, like I said, there's ways to take a very simple position and make it sound a little bit more than it is without having to lie. You know, you can take, you know, ran a cash register and make that sound very established without lying. But it's just a matter of just don't bend the truth at all, ever. Just don't ever lie. All right? Last but not least, write your resume first and then go back and write your cover letter. It's a lot easier because all your cover letter is your resume written out in sentence form. I mean, it really is that simple. You know, your resume is going to have this nice flow to it, an objective, your education, your experience, some of your skills, and some of your noteworthy accomplishments. Same with your cover letter. Your cover letter is going to start out, first paragraph. It's just going to talk about what job you're applying for, where you're at in life. You know, applying for assistant manager position of Lowe's, recent graduate of Louisiana Tech University or University of Louisiana at Monroe with a management position, a degree in management. Your second paragraph is going to talk about your educational experience. Your third paragraph is going to talk about your job experience. Fourth paragraph is going to talk about all the little extras. I call that the selling point paragraph. It's one of those, if they don't like the experience or they don't like your education, that fourth paragraph, that's where you get to sell yourself. All right? And the fifth paragraph is the easiest one to write of all because that's just a thank you for your time. You know, attached is my resume. If you have any questions, please contact me at this, and this. So just write your resume and then go back and write your cover letter. All right? Feel free to use our services. I kind of talked about that earlier. That's our website, www.ulm.edu/careerconnections. Over on the left-hand side, I think it's about the fifth option down is sample resumes and resources. Also, you can feel free, make an appointment, come and see me, come and see my director, Rosalind. Yes, ma'am?
You said that you were going to talk about when we could use high school stuff on there.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. When we're talking about, for me, on mine, it's called memberships and organizations. All right, it's a section on my resume. Here, it's called noteworthy. All right, obviously, as freshmen, you probably hadn't had a lot of time to get super involved here at ULM. That's understandable. So, I give you permission to use some of your high school, I guess, noteworthy experiences. But when I say that they have to be noteworthy, I'm talking they need to be valedictorian, salutatorian, they need to be one of an officer of a club in high school, things of that nature. You know, you don't want to just put that you were, on the Spanish club or this or that. You know, it needs to be, president of student council or, vice president of my class or, secretary for FBLA. You know, things that really, really matter. Okay, you kind of see what I mean? But I only give you permission to use those until you start replacing them with college stuff. All right, when you get to be a senior in college, you probably don't need your high school stuff on there anymore. Okay, start to phase it out. But obviously, as freshmen, you just don't have a lot to build off of. So you've got to be able to pull a little bit from your high school over. But go easy on it and make sure it's the important stuff, okay? And emphasize important stuff. I usually put that section right below your experience. I like to call mine memberships and organizations. You can also, I've seen it listed as honors and organizations, honors and awards. That could be another one. So just things of that nature. But that's kind of its own little section, and that can be, any scholarships that you received. It could be any clubs or organizations that you were involved in. And sometimes you can even list some of your volunteer experience under that instead of having a volunteer section. I did a lot of my volunteer under my memberships and organizations. So that's just something to look at too.
Go the distance without going the distance. Online learning with the University of Louisiana at Monroe. ulm.edu/eULM.